Yeah. So what would be the greatest way that I could experience this unlimitedness that I pray about every day?
Yeah, just enjoy it, my dear friend. You see, you can't put it in a bottle, and you can't give it a name. Ultimately, part of the plan as you grow into greater and greater love is as you are on a quest for love. Suddenly, you become that, and no longer are you seeking it, but you're just the full expression of it.
Hi, Summer.
Hi, Michael.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's who you are as an individual has had a really, and I'm getting emotional already.
Oh,
Has
wow.
had a really, really big impact on my life.
Really? Wow. Thank you so much.
And it's really beautiful to have the opportunity to share a space with you and to, share a message with others, even if it's just through a very simple conversation, which is, I think, what you do regularly by allowing Dr. Peoples to speak through your vehicle. And I think that we can never, I think it's easy to underestimate the power of word. But the reality is, when people come from this tremendous space of transparency and love and integrity, it truly, truly affects people. And who you are as an individual and what you do has had a tremendous effect on my life and inspiration in my life. So I want to thank you for being here and thank you for who you are.
Thank you so much. It's so good to hear that. You never know. Sometimes you don't know how you affect people's lives unless they tell you. So I really appreciate that so much. I'm all sweaty palm today. I don't know why. I'm just like, it feels exciting. And thank you for your tears and all that. It's so beautiful. I really, really appreciate it. When I hear from people who tell me how their lives have been affected by my work, it's really calming to my spirit. There's so much judgment that's cast on this sort of thing that I do and on so many people's different modalities through which they get to know God and spirit and share their gifts with the world and show love. There's so much judgment on that. And it seems like it's been amping up quite a bit in the world lately. People are getting bolder in screaming out what they feel about something. And I think in some ways it's probably healthy. Maybe they're not doing it in the best ways, but at least they're acknowledging their truth inside of themselves. So, and I think that's really important for anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. I can tell you from what I've been through over the last 10 years of my life and the transformation that I've gone through on an individual level, I think it's quite clear to me that this Holy Spirit or this Divine Mother, this feminine energy, has certainly been awakened on this planet in this atmosphere energetically. And I think for the majority of people who are really on the path to kind of like learning who they are, I think part of that repressed energy, that rage, that pain, that fear, those distortions and those limiting beliefs, they have to find a way out so that we can process and so that we can kind of move towards a place of actualizing spirit on a grander scale, right? Not just on this individual little parts and pieces. Like, in order for us as a group to move towards that place of like love and truth and integrity, like, it's super messy. It's so fucking messy.
Yeah. I can give a reference here. This is something I learned years ago. I was asking a friend of mine who's a student of the Bible. I said, so this thing in the Bible about all spirit knowers and mediums shall be stoned to death. And I thought, yikes, what does that mean? You know, and he goes back with the Bible to the origins, to the, Aramaic and Hebrew. And I mean, he cross-references everything.
Right.
And he said in Leviticus, I believe it is, that the meaning of being stoned to death is to be torn down, to be rebuilt closer to God. And I think we're in a process of that right now. I think all of our false pretenses and everything else is being stripped away, and we're feeling very vulnerable. A lot of people are feeling very afraid. It's a little kind of a wonky time, but I think it's because when we can't find the answers outside of us anymore, we can't point the finger at the world and say it's your fault.
Right.
It's the finger's getting pointed right back at us, into our heart, that now we have to go inside. And now we find God. Now we start to grow. Now, and so I think it is kind of like that feeling of like we're being stoned to death. We're being torn down to be rebuilt closer to God. And sometimes it's hard to keep sight of that.
Yeah, absolutely, because of the intensity and the vulnerability and the sense of just helplessness that comes up inherently when our fears become conscious. And then, with awareness comes responsibility. Then how do you manage that intellectual reality in conjunction with your emotional reality and the physical reality? And how do you find that balance, right? How do you find that semblance of we're all wanting to move towards peace and love and unity and truth, but you have to reveal that truth to yourself. That's the fucking starting point, I think, in a lot of ways, right? You know what I mean?
Right.
Everything how you interact with the world is a direct reflection of your own relationship with self.
Yeah. It's interesting. You say everybody's trying to move closer to peace and love and harmony and all that stuff in the world. But it's sort of interesting. There's two ways in which I see that people are doing that. And this, as old as time, really. One is to go inside of self and find that in there, that you are what you are seeking, that you are the creator of your own peace, that, be the peace that you want to see in the world. I think it's Dalai Lama or somebody like that who said that.
Gandhi, I believe, or something.
Gandhi, yeah. Okay. And, yeah, I would never win a trivia game.
No, don't worry. Me neither. Believe me, I've worked to become as simple as possible in this life, and therefore I hold the least amount of intellectual knowledge as I can. It's necessary.
Yeah, and then the other way people are, initially they seek it this way, is to look to the outer world, to try to force the world to fit them,
right.
not realizing that they already fit the world just as they are. But people are trying to get the whole world to comply. That is a huge, huge amount of work. Yeah. You really have to work hard to make everybody believe what you believe and think the way you think and like the same color and the same drinks and the same foods. And, oh, good Lord, the things that people will be unhappy about because the rest of the world isn't doing exactly what they are doing. And it's kind of silly. It's really more falling in love with the dance. Right. And realizing that your place in this world is absolutely perfect as you are, no matter what you're thinking, how you are. When you're really authentic, when you're really going inside of yourself and really getting in touch with your heart, because some people might say, well, if we all just did what we wanted to do, we'd be a bunch of hedonists, and some people would be lopping people's heads off. And it's like, no. If you really go into your heart, into your authenticity, I believe at the heart of every single solitary person, even the worst person on the planet that you can think of, inside there is love. And I think that's what we're seeking. And once we find it, it feels so good. That's all we want to do is express that.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We become guided by that love and we recognize that there's a paradoxal, or there's this certain nature of reality that allows those contrasts to exist inherently. Yes. But as we move deeper into the self, we inherently become more conscientious, we become more self-honest, we become more integral. And so we recognize that those inherent virtues in many ways are a reflection of our relationship with love, with truth, with God.
Ooh, I like
But
that.
then as we again move deeper from an intellectual based identity to an emotional space where we're living in this, like, I call it like feeling consciousness,
Mhm.
we move with the dance, with the energy, with the love, and we learn how to let go of that judgment. And we allow this deeper truth, this wave of just like intelligence that it's so abstract, right? You can't even, we, so many people are living in this intellectual space, but they don't realize that God space is like underneath all of that classification. It's in that movement of just of energy, and it's
Yeah.
symbolic, it's abstract, it's intelligent, it's all encompassing. If I could explain it.
I think you've explained it beautifully. I really do. And I loved how you called it the relationship, our relationship with love. I think that's really beautiful. I think that really is what it's all about. As you're talking, I was thinking about my cats. I have 2 kitty cats, and
Hmm.
they know who they are. They
Hmm.
don't make any excuses about it, and they can feel the teeny tiniest little hair that's on, piece of fur on their back that's out of place, and be like, ah, and they'll take care of it, and they move
Right.
with it. Or
Yeah.
I can just literally, move my lip balm to the wrong place on the table, and they'll feel the energetics shift in the whole house, and
Yeah.
I think that's what animals do. They're not sitting there making excuses for the way that they are. They're so in touch with their authenticity that everything just kind of falls into place. And even when animals are in the process of dying, they embrace that process, not as a good or a bad or a right or a wrong or anything. They're just like, okay, this is what I'm doing now, and I'm going through this experience now. And they sit with it, and they might go off and they might hide, and to be alone with that, and they kind of get in a meditative state. They're just remarkably beautiful. But I guess I'm saying that because I've noticed in the last few years, because I'm constantly learning as well as anybody else.
Sure.
In the last few years, I've really gotten to a point where I can pick up on the little nuances inside of myself. I can hear a thought that seems, for the most part, would seem out of place in the day or something. But I pick it up. Like, I'll just give a real simple example. I was on the phone one time with a friend of mine, and while we were talking, I suddenly tasted Campbell's tomato soup in my mouth.
Uh-huh.
And I said, "Oh, this is so weird, Dan." I said, all I can do is taste Campbell's tomato soup in my mouth. And he said, that's because I'm getting hungry and I have a can of Campbell's tomato soup sitting next to me, and I'm about to make lunch.
Yeah.
And that's how in tune you actually can get if you really pay attention to those little, I guess you would call it the still small voice within, that little inkling of something. It's that thing that might tell us not to go down the dark alleyway.
Sure.
Because you don't want to go down there and find out why you shouldn't have. Just don't do it. You don't always have to have the answer to everything. Just trust what the guidance is inside. Sort of like like a red light, green light game. It's okay, this is good. Okay, let me go this way. Now let me stop here.
Right, and it's based on developing that relationship with your intuition and that feeling inside of realizing that you don't have those color codes to tell you, but inside of you have a guidance system that is inherent, profoundly connected to everything.
We all do. And it's like anything else that you need to practice with it. You need to develop it, or it just sort of sits there dormant. And if you keep pushing away all those little things that come up inside of you as, oh, that's just your imagination, ignore it. Or if you see a movement in your peripheral vision and you say, oh, that looked like a person or a ghost or something, but it's just my imagination, or it must be a shadow, it must be the light. If you just keep holding that at arm's length, you're never, ever, ever going to come into, to terms with it and understand that these are actually little messages to us from the universe. It's the way that we communicate. It's all energetics. And if you start to trust those little inklings that you get, and you see that shadow in your peripheral vision, and you say, wait a minute, that did look like a person. Excuse me, but who's here? and you start to communicate with it, and you develop this consciously develop this relationship with spirit, consciously develop a relationship with God. You've got to work at any relationship, I mean, if we hadn't emailed back and forth about doing today, we wouldn't be here talking. We had to have a relationship. We had to develop something. We had to communicate.
Sure. Well, and it's that openness of that kind of that universal heart. I mean, I've told this on my podcast before, which is how I came across you. For years, like on my spiritual path, here's my crown chakras opening up right now. My first kind of real clairaudient experiences, I was about 22, and I was at work, and I was asking myself how I could find this inner peace. And that's the first time I had heard a female voice, and she said, "Give your life to God." And I kind of laughed, like I didn't know how I was supposed to do that. And then like a month or two later, I received this book called Putting on the Mind of Christ. And so I decided at 22, this was it. I was going to put on the mind of Christ, and I was going to give my life to God. And so over the years, I would seek out books that had the least amount of distortion available that would help me move closer to God. And I'd buy a lot of books, but I'd read very few because I could read frequency so well, distortion so well. And I always found that oftentimes the channeled information was the most pure information, which kind of relates to what you do for a living. And around 2009, 2010, I came across this book called To Dance with Angels by Tom and Linda Pendleton. Right.
About Thomas Jacobson.
Right. And I came across this gentleman, the idea of this gentleman, Thomas Jacobson, who was channeling this Dr. Peebles. And so after I got done reading this book, I was like super inspired. I was like, shit, I want to get a reading by Dr. Peebles. And so I looked up, did some online searching, and realized that Thomas Jacobson, I guess, wasn't channeling anymore. And so there was two ladies that came up as potential channels for Dr. Peebles. And I got on both the websites, and for whatever reason, I aligned with your energy, and I felt something about you, and set up a 45-minute channeling session, and you gave me the recording, and this was around 2010. And God, I guess I lost my train of thought, but my point is, like, I did lose my train of thought. I was leading up to a point. Can't remember now. Anyway, do you remember what I started out with?
Well, you were talking about right before you started talking. You said that your crown chakra was opening.
Oh, got it. Yeah, but there was something I was just kind of tying into you and my relationship with Dr. Peebles and all that kind of stuff, and what you do for a living. Anyway,
and we were talking about opening, ourselves up to the relationship with God and spirit. You said that you had read the book about you had heard the woman's voice who said, get to know God, or give your life to God, however that was put.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. For whatever reason, I lost it. But anyway, so I guess we can kind of just tie this into just in terms of learning more about. Your website talks about like you were conscious at like 11 months. And I guess what I'm kind of interested in really sharing with the audience is kind of your relationship with spirit, how you were so conscious at such a young age, and what led you to this like path and becoming a channel.
I didn't know anything else. It was so natural to me. I didn't know that the rest of the world wasn't like this. I remember when I was 11 months old, and I was all of a sudden I'm standing on the lawn outside in front of the house, and my mom is looking at me. She had one of those old Polaroid cameras, that you point, click, and the film comes out. And my brother was standing next to me, and she said, "Come on, Sammy, smile. And I wasn't going to smile. She said, "I'm going to take your picture." She said, and I'm thinking in my mind, "You're not taking my picture. It's mine." Like a little kid would be like, "No, that's mine." she can't take my picture. It's mine. That's the way I was thinking. And finally she snapped the photo, and I, in that moment, clearly remember I can't tell you, like beings all around me. Like it was just normal.
Yeah.
Almost like I was surrounded by these people, in spirit.
Yeah.
And they're all looking at me, and I was like, okay, I'm going to find out what this truth thing is about once and for all. And I made a commitment at that moment.
Yeah.
Years later, I told my mom that story, and she said, I have that photo. She said, I remember that day very clearly. I couldn't get you to smile for anything. And I had just woken you up from a nap. So I think you were disoriented. And I said, oh, okay. And she showed me the photo. And, but I don't remember anything else but being connected to spirit, not really calling it spirit or anything else. It was just the way I lived. I could see air. I was in my early teens, and I said to a friend of mine, I said, isn't it funny how you can see air? And she laughed. She said, see air? You can't see air. And I thought, you can't? I mean, to me, air has texture. I can see it. I mean, it's transparent. Yes, I have excellent vision, so it's nothing wrong with my vision.
Right.
But air has texture because it's energy. I can see the energy, and I can see the movement there.
Yeah.
So this went on and on in my life, and I just, but as I got older and I found out, more and more that most people didn't see the world the way that I did,
Right.
that I was different. Thank God I had the parents I had who didn't tell me I was weird or lock me up or anything. I started to try to fit in. I tried to be everything that I thought people wanted me to be, and dress right and say the right things and be, be in with the in crowd kind of thing. And I just couldn't. It wasn't in my heart to do it. I just couldn't fit. And no matter how hard I tried. And then later on, when I was in my 20s, I had an experience where I was going to kill myself because I just felt like I just didn't belong in the world. And I also was very, very, very terrified of death, which is really strange. I was terrified of death, but I was going to kill myself. Go figure. Yeah. I didn't understand. I thought death was just this wasteland of black that you would just be floating out in outer space forever. Right. And very boring. And so I was working at my parents' recording studio, and I went out to get the mail first before I was going to kill myself. I walked outside to get the mail, and I stepped into this pocket of warmth. It was like, and I could feel like these enormous hands around me. And I knew who it was, and I knew it was Jesus. And that was not a part of my everyday upbringing or anything. My parents talked about God and Jesus and all kinds of religious things, Zen Buddhism, you name it. They talked about it. They studied it. So how I knew it just was, it was a knowing inside of myself and I heard, I love you, Summer. And I kind of stepped back into it, and I was like, whoa. When I stepped away from it, it was back into the cool spring day weather. But when I stepped back into it, it was like this warmth again. So my friend, who was a born again Christian, convinced me that I was born again, but that I needed to go to church, and I needed to study the Bible, and I needed to do a lot of things. And, all church involved. And I went to church, and for a couple of years, I guess, and started to drive everybody crazy because I became a real evangelist, trying to get everybody to, convert, and telling them they're all going to go to hell if they don't believe in Jesus and they don't go to church and all this. And I started to realize at church, and I hope I'm not talking too long about this, because my life story and my journey just kind of goes from one thing to the next, but it's all interconnected. Yeah. And I went to church, and I started to realize it was sort of a pattern there. And it was that it seemed that the people in church, including the minister, talked more about Satan and the devil than they did talking about Jesus Christ and his teachings. Right. And I got really kind of like, what is going on here? And I became very afraid of everything. And I was afraid that, I think I've said this many times, but I was, afraid Satan was lurking in my lunch meat. I mean, that's how bad it got. It's like, no matter where you go, no matter what, you didn't know if you were safe. And I thought, wait a minute, doesn't that counter what we're supposed to trust in, which is trust in God and have faith and walk by faith, not by sight? And I thought, gee whiz, we should be talking about the beautiful teachings of Jesus. I'm within you, you're within me, we're as one. All these wonderful things that he said that were just beautiful expressions of love. And so finally, one day I was in church, and it was one of these big evangelical churches in Los Angeles. And there were about 300 people there, maybe more. I don't know.
Is that where you grew up, in Los Angeles?
Yeah, I grew up in LA, in the San Fernando Valley. In the back row, back pew, there was this old man came in, and he was all hunched up. And he came in, just last person who came into the church, and he goes over and he sits down in the back pew. And I looked at him and I thought, oh, and he was all by himself, and I just felt such love for him. And I just, oh, poor guy. And, but he got it. He got there, made it to church. And then we were told that we would be moved by the Holy Spirit and to get into groups of about 20 people each and hold hands and just let the Holy Spirit move you. And I thought, okay, I was very obedient. I was always a good girl. I'll do what you say. Yeah. So we held hands, and I was moved by the Holy Spirit and said, you might hear, words coming out of your mouth that you don't understand, but it's okay. And I'm like, okay. And then it happened, and it happened, and it happened. And I don't remember anything other than I finally popped out of that trance 20 minutes later, maybe. I guess everybody had been watching me the whole time.
I believe it.
And when I came out of that trance, I looked at everybody, and everybody in the church literally took a step back away from me, like they were terrified.
Okay.
And that moment, nobody was saying anything. It was completely quiet. And there was the little old man in the back of the church. He all of a sudden stood up, raised up his hands to the heavens. His head went back, and this angelic voice comes out of him, and he's singing this. It was the celestial choir, coming through him. It was so beautiful. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I was so excited because we had just witnessed a miracle, and I couldn't wait for the ministers to talk about it, and that we were just going to praise the Lord and everything. And that minister is like, and he's flipping through his, let's turn to him, da, da, da. And that was it. And I thought, wait, what? It's like, where are you people? Hello, wake up. And I left the church, and I gave my, obligatory $20 to the church. And I left, and I thought, God, I can't do it.
Yeah.
If I don't go to church and I go to hell, then I guess I go to hell, because I said, that is just too bizarre to me. I don't understand what just happened there. But I said, I love you with all my heart. And I believe in you with all my heart. And I said, but I don't know what that's about, and I don't want any part of it. And I left, and I heard at that moment, I heard God say, if you end up in hell, I will be there with you too. There will always be a chance for your redemption.
Yeah.
And he said, I am omnipresent.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, oh, right. So you're everywhere.
Yeah.
And I thought, yeah. And, and so that was a huge turning point for me. And then because I tried to go to church, I have to say, because I heard spirits, I saw spirits, I felt spirits, I was psychic. And I didn't know what to do with all of that. I was kind of like, why do I know these things? Or why do I see these things? And people would say, oh, you're seeing demons, blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, but they're not hurting me. I'm not seeing anything bad. And I just kept having these really loving experiences.
Right.
But, society is so conditioned to believe in these other things and,
Sure.
and to judge and condemn,
Sure.
because they're afraid. I understand that.
Yeah.
But so when I left the church, it was a huge turning point for me, because one of the things I think that makes me unusual as a trance medium, I don't know if it's unusual, but, a big part of the New Age movement that was, everybody's talking about the New Age movement.
Sure.
The New Age movement came about because people left the church. and they were tired of the dogma, and they didn't want to talk about God, and they didn't want to talk about Jesus. So those were the two no-nos for the New Agers.
Sure.
But you could talk about Saint Germain, Archangel Michael, anybody else, but not Jesus, and let's not talk about God. Okay. And I lived in Sedona for 30 years, and I saw a lot of the New Age movement going on, and people would call me New Age, and I'm like, no, I don't consider myself to be New Age at all. In fact, what I do is actually quite old age. Yeah. And it's actually in the Bible. I mean, there are people who channel spirits. Jesus Christ heard the angels, spoke to the angels. Right. That's channeling. He was probably one of the greatest mediums to walk the earth. So I was a little different in that I did believe in Jesus, not in the churchy way, but I believed in the teachings and the love of the Christ within all of us. Right. That was the message. And I believed in God because I hear the voice of God. I do. I just do. I hear it loud and clear in my head, this directive that is just profound. It's just, you don't know until you experience it. When you experience it, you know what it is. You just know it. It's just, it's experiential. How do you teach somebody to get their balance on the bicycle? You can't. They eventually just have to get it. And when they get it, it's there. It's solid. It's in them forever. You know, you don't really lose your balance on the bicycle. So I don't know. So anyway, so that was just a huge turning point for me because I kind of was straddling the two worlds of being I'm a Christian mystic basically, but I wouldn't want to call myself even a Christian. I believe in Jesus, but I am a mystic, you know, and I don't want to be pigeonholed with a church or something like category. So
yeah, no, exactly. It's funny. In fact, you just touched on so many like different notes that I just randomly had, but it says why these woo-woo spiritual folks give grounded integral folks a bad name. And this is just old notes from a couple of years ago, but it's really the point of what you're making is that as human beings, we love to create intellectual identities, and those intellectual identities give us a sense of value. But as you move deeper into that nature of self, spirit, love, truth, you begin to shed all of these layers, and you don't subscribe to these like mass limiting belief systems, and you don't overemphasize certain frameworks as a way to value yourself. You are just in a direct relationship with God and love, and that's what the mystical path is, right?
Exactly.
And so yeah,
no,
and
go ahead.
so yeah, no, and like Dr. Peoples like even told me like in my on the reading you gave me back then, it was just like you're going to always be pushed out to the mainstream because that's what you're here to do. You're here to introduce something that's not mainstream to help make it mainstream. He goes, no matter how hard you try, you're going to get pushed into the mainstream. If you were in the spiritual community, you'd be bored out your mind. And that's part of the thing is you're not a man of limitation in any way, shape or form. Like you're here to like encompass everything and to be with everybody.
Yeah.
And so kind of the other point that I was thinking about on my notes, around 2016, I was just heavy in this transformational healing process, and I woke up. I was in a lot of pain, and I heard the angelic realms, the choir singing in my head for 5-10 minutes. I don't know. I was just sitting there in bed, and I know that they were there to like heal, to support me in what I was going through. But then there was a channeled session in December 21 that you gave with Dr. Peoples, and he talked about the fact that sometimes we just tap into that realm and that music, and it's always there. They're always playing, but you as an individual, you know, if your frequency is aligned, you can actually hear that music and that sound. And so that made sense to me. It wasn't maybe that they were singing for me, but I was tapped into their realm, and I was able to hear their love.
Yeah, well, and I think it's a state of surrender that you were in, and sure. And when I tell people that it being a trance medium requires surrendering to the unknown, really, just surrendering into the wonder of the universe and letting whatever will happen, trusting that it's going to be beautifully aligned and no matter what, and not having to control it. So when you were kind of going through the dark night of the soul or something like that, whatever
absolutely
going through, you were in a state of surrender where you just go, I don't know what to do anymore. And you just gave it up. And what that does is that just, it puts you right in alignment with your heart, with the universe. Puts you in a place where you can hear the celestial choir, you can hear spirit. It's actually a really beautiful moment, because it's just where you just say, I can't do it alone anymore. I just can't do this. And you gave up control. Yeah. And I've heard the celestial choir. It is, there's just no words for it. It's frequency, really. It's just, and it's just, wow. Yeah. It's just absolutely incredible. And the minute I realized I was hearing it, it disappeared.
Yeah.
The minute you see a ghost and you say, "Oh, it's a ghost," then you don't see him anymore, because of the back of your humanness.
Yeah. And I remembered the point that I was the rounding up to make, which was about you having this like universally loving and open heart. And what I was wanting to, share the story and bring to the point was that you didn't know me from a hole in the wall. And I sent you that email in 2013 and said, "Hey, I'm driving through Sedona to Tucson," or wherever it was. I had just got separated from the relationship I was in for 16 years. I was married for 12 years, and I was, I decided, hey, I might want to have kids again. And so I paid for this like $10,000 surgery in Arizona to get I had my reverse vasectomy done. And so I was headed that way, and I sent you an email, and I wanted to see if you would be open to connecting, and you were super cool about it. And, we met for breakfast, and it makes me want to cry, because there's so many people in the world that are so closed off to love. And the point that I wanted to make to the listeners is developing a relationship with love, like truly, it comes from such a place, like you said, of surrender, but of just tremendous sincerity and integrity. And people need to understand that part of our work is learning how to read frequency. As we learn how to read frequency and we develop this discernment, then you're really able to see who's who and what's what on this plane. And I know you had some recent things going on with one of your listeners and that email, and we don't necessarily need to go into that if you don't want to. But my point is, folks like us are inherently hyper empathic and very, very sensitive and loving. And when you develop that loving and open-hearted relationship, you know what I mean? There's a level of vulnerability to that, tremendous, because it requires tremendous vulnerability to even develop a relationship with the unseen,
Yeah. And to go counter, to go against what society tells you should do in order to be a good person, in order to be a loving person, what that looks like for everybody. Right. They have to do it in a particular way. It's kind of funny. I mean, people think, oh, if I volunteer at a soup kitchen, I'm a good person. But then they might be standing there at the soup kitchen judging the people as they're serving them, And so it's what's going on inside of your heart, and only you know what that is. You can do all kinds of things to make people think that you are this loving person.
Right, but it's a facade in a lot of ways.
Yeah. But and all kinds of activities that look like you're a loving person, but doesn't necessarily mean that you are one. And only you know that. Only you know who you are, and God knows who you are. And there's the televangelist Joyce Meyer, who said something I thought was really funny. She says, "Sitting in church doesn't make you any more spiritual than sitting in a garage makes you a car."
I like that.
Yeah. And because it really is, it's how you have to be proactive. You have to do it inside of yourself. You can try to hoodwink people and pretend, but it's not going to change anything inside of you. It might change your outer world. People might bow to you, might think you're wonderful, think you have power or whatever. And that's all fine and dandy, but there's an awful lot of really miserable people who do that, who still say, well, something's missing in my life. Well, what's missing is your relationship with yourself, your true inner nature. if you don't have that relationship, then you're pretty much a lost soul in many respects. I just, once you get in touch with that, there's no going back. You'd say, oh, you know what? I'm pretty good company. I mean, you're with yourself all the time anyway. May as well
you might as well make a best friend out of it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And and as far as that one client of mine, we're so sensitive, and it is, sometimes it's like all you can see is that pimple on your face, even though nobody else sees it. And it's that one person who says one thing that can just shred you because you feel it so deeply. I just think, my God, why would somebody think that about me? But then you get to a place of, well, because they're showing you who they are. And it has nothing to do with who I am. I know
they're projecting their own distortions and all that.
Exactly. I thought of it this morning because the woman had said, she was so sweet. I mean, it's so sweet. For 4 years, bought every MP3, and on the little receipts, she'd write, God, thank you so much for everything that you and Dr. Peebles are doing. And it's really helped me through some really hard times, and da-da-da-da-da. And then I get a receipt from one of the most recent ones, and it was, again, a beautiful, loving message on there. And apparently she listened to it. And I wake up in the morning, and she's written me one word. It says Satanist. And I'm like, huh? Wait, what? And I was thinking this morning, what I said to her as I replied, and I said, excuse me? What? Because I thought maybe it was a joke or something. I mean, I was hoping it was something like that, and she just writes back, and she capitalized it this time, Satanist. And I was like, huh. And I asked her, please, if you would, please explain yourself, because you've always written such beautiful messages to me, and I don't understand what's happened. And I'm so sorry you feel that way. I did want to learn. I wanted to learn. I wanted to know her perspective. But she dropped off my mailing list. And I thought, when she wrote that to me, when she wrote Satanist, I could have just written back and said, yes, you are.
Yeah.
That's the naughty side of me.
I get it. Yeah, I like it.
It's like when I was accused of being a cult. Like, are you kidding me? I don't even have that kind of energy to want to be a cult.
Yeah,
I mean, my greatest joy would be if somebody learns something from this, walks away, and never has to come back and listen to another session. I want people to be empowered. I was going to say to this person who said I was a cult, and then they kind of took it back. But I want to, when next time we talked, and he said, so how are you doing? How was your week? I was going to say, oh, it's been really busy, trying to keep track of all my followers. Come up with new ways to hoodwink them. It's like, good Lord. It's just so silly, isn't it? It's just silly. It is. I have to use humor in order to get by sometimes. I like to see the funny side of life. I really do. It really helps.
I think that's very, very important.
Yeah.
When we had breakfast in 2013, I got out of my car, and then we went in and we sat down or whatever. And you said, I could tell that you were an ET right away. Do you remember telling me that?
I did. Oh gosh.
Yeah.
No, I don't remember that.
And I said, well, why do you? And you said, because your eyes are so big.
Oh, yeah. That would probably be one of the things. Yeah, the Pleiadian sort of eyes that you have.
Right. Have you learned about the different races that are incarnated in this realm right now? Or do you know or is there anything that you've learned over your years in channeling or just research? I mean, it's a topic of curiosity for me that eventually, because the extraterrestrials and the UFOs are becoming more prominent. It's going to become clear in the coming decade that we have brothers and sisters in the sky, and then they're here, and we're going to start learning in this century where their origins are, right? So it's a really intense conversation.
Oh, well, I mean, and I have a lot of experience with that whole thing. As far as learning about extraterrestrials, I've learned through physical encounters with extraterrestrials. I don't know if you know Tom Dongo, who's a ufologist. He's world-renowned. He was just on Beyond Skinwalker Ranch on the History Channel. He's a very good friend of mine, and he actually lived with me for a while. We were roommates for a couple of years, and during that time, I have to say that the activity really does follow him. I mean, it really does follow him. He's just a super sweet, genuine guy from Maine who's very unassuming, very genuine. And he's always been sort of like, I don't know, I don't know why I've had these experiences, but they just kind of have followed him around all his life.
Mm-hmm.
And, just is real sweet, simple guy, but has had these incredibly profound experiences. And, so I had quite a few experiences when he was living with me, but also way prior to that, I got involved in doing some remote viewing for a couple they were searching for gold. And I didn't know what remote viewing was. I was very new to channeling.
Mm-hmm.
They caught me at the end of a session when I used to do the sessions in person. And as soon as I came out of trance, there was this map on the floor. And they said, what do you think about this map? And I said, what do you feel about this map? And I said, and I just went to this huge map and I pointed to one spot on the map. I said, I don't know, but whatever it is you're looking for is right there. And they were like, whoa, well, that's where we think it is. And I said, oh. So then they said, well, maybe you can do some remote viewing for us when we're out on the land. And I said, what's that? They said, well, you can do it. I didn't even know I could, seeing things in real time. You see it as a vision in your mind. You can just see what's happening on the other side of the world or someplace else. It came so naturally to me. It was crazy. I got my first cell phone, little flip phone, and I'd be talking to them on the phone, and they'd be out on the land, and I would say, okay, take a couple steps forward. And the guy would take a couple steps forward. And I said, okay, there's gold underneath your foot. And he lifts his foot up and he says, I don't see anything. I said, okay, you see the rock that's on the ground there? And he goes, oh yeah. I said, well, dig that up. There's gold in it. And he dug it up and there was gold in it. And we never found, I think we might have found the mother lode, but I think it would have taken dynamite to get it out of there. And frankly, this is not the way to use your psychic gifts.
Absolutely. Yeah. You were probably at a different space in your life. Yeah. I'm younger, I imagine.
And the fascinating part of that journey was it showed me that I could do something that I didn't know I could do.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, literally they'd be driving down the road and I would say, watch out for the rabbit. And they go, okay, we see it. And then I say, okay, you're going to go down a little further and there's going to be a bunch of bushes because they were like out in the desert and there was nothing. I said, but there's going to be a bunch of bushes and in those bushes, there's a gate and it's up to you as to whether or not you want to go in there and trespass, but that's where you need to go. Right. And they did it and they found it and saw it. So that was it was interesting, but it was definitely not the use of my gifts. And what happened, the reason I'm telling you about that is because that accelerated some things in my life. And I mean, I was so young. I was so new to this. I just was doing what I knew to do. And I was trying to be the most loving person I could be in the world. And I think I was about 36 years old. Mm-hmm. And my children were away for the night. I was divorced and I was home alone. I was sleeping in the living room because I gave my children the bedrooms and I just slept in the living room. And I woke up and there was this, I tried to get out of bed and I couldn't push up. And I thought, God, I must be really tired. And I'm pushing up like, what's going on? And I looked over my shoulder and I see this gray, I guess what I found out they were the ones with really big black eyes, white, super chalky white skin. I mean, really, it feels like almost like a wetsuit. It's just the weirdest texture. And he was holding me down and I got so angry. I looked at and I said, you motherfucker. I was so angry. I pushed up and I threw him off of me and I was sleeping next to a sliding glass door. Yeah. He rolled off of me and then rolled through the window, which was closed, and disappeared. And I thought, what? I sat on the side of my bed. I'm like, oh my God, what was that? Yeah. And I'm sitting there and I had a nightlight on, little lighthouse nightlight about this big. Yeah. And I look up and there's another one and he's holding the lighthouse and he's kind of looking at it like, that's very interesting. I was very docile and I looked at him and I said, you have no permission to be here. Get out. And he just blinked out. Yeah. And this sort of thing kept happening. I had a lot more experiences of ships and things like that.
Mm.
I had, this might sound really conspiratorial, blah, blah, but I mean, this really happened because I thought this was just a joke. In Sedona, everybody be talking about the little tiny black helicopters. Well, one day I was doing the remote viewing, and all these little tiny black helicopters were flying over my house in a circle. And I got really angry. Silly me. I mean, I have this little righteous anger in me sometimes. And I went outside and I said, "You mother," I said, "you have no permission to be here. Get out." And they just took off and left. So a lot of things kind of amped up at that point. And later on, I saw all different ones. I mean, I saw, I guess you would call them reptilians.
Yeah.
I think that's what Tom said they were. When he was living at my house, I was in my, my bedroom.
Is he the singer of the rock band? Is this the same guy we're thinking about?
No, Tom Dongo is a ufologist. He's talks about UFOs and extraterrestrials.
Okay.
He's world renowned. He's got like 8 books out on the topic, and he was on at Bradshaw Ranch with Linda Bradshaw, and they wrote a book together out here in Sedona. It's a very popular place with a lot of sightings of UFOs and things like that. So he's like, you know, a lot of people's heroes when it comes to UFO and ET expertise and stuff. So
awesome. Sorry to cut you there.
When he was living with me, we also had another friend who was living there who was going to be homeless. So we had him living with us as well. And one night I was in bed, I was sleeping on my stomach, and I woke up to myself being pulled out of bed by my ankles. And I was sliding out of bed. I was like, what the heck? And I thought, oh, those guys, you know, they're probably playing a trick on me, you know, and pulling me out of bed. And I thought, oh, you guys, you know, and I look over my shoulder, and it's not them. And it was these very, all I can say, tall lizard-like creatures that were very, very scary. And there had to be at least 6 of them, I think. I didn't have time to count, but there were a lot. And it was just so weird. There's a big window at the foot of my bed, behind it, you know, across the room. Right. And they were backing up into that window and pulling me that way. And I got angry. And I said, "You have no permission to be here." I said, "Get out, get out, get out." And I rolled over and I sat up, and they just disappeared. Right. And I was like, whew. And I prayed really hard after that. I mean, I was God, Jesus, everybody, you know, calling all angels. Yeah, and that's one that really scared me. I've done ghost bustings that I never was afraid, but that scared me. And, but what I've learned, so I guess the moral of my story here from Tom, what I learned is that these characters, a lot of them don't have a lot of power in our atmosphere.
Right.
And that's why I was able to, when I just saw the gray, I was able to just push them off of me. And that's why I was able to just tell these reptilians to go away. Right. You know, it's really a matter of taking charge. It's energetics. It's when you stand your ground. They really have no charge over you. Right. And there was one point at which I was getting a lot of visitations at another house of mine. And I said, "Tom, I can't take it anymore. It's like happening all the time, every night." He said, "Oh yeah, you know," he said, Put a blue ribbon of light around your house." He said, "All you have to do is just visualize it." He said, "I don't know why it works." He said, "But it's kind of like a keep out sign or something." So I visualized blue, much like your hat. Yeah. And did that around the house. And the activity stopped. Wow. And which also worked for a friend of mine she lives in Denver, and she was having a problem with homeless people coming into her house at night, like just trying to open the door. And she was getting a little nervous about it. And I said, well, maybe try the blue light trick. She did. She's never had one incident again. Wow. It's really very interesting. It's all energetics. Yeah. Again, it's just energetics. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's interesting. Yeah. I was curious. I had my first Kundalini awakening at around 18 years old. And it was the first time I saw a UFO. Well, and it wasn't just a little one. We were watching it for a few hours in the sky, and it was a mothership. And the mothership came down. It was so large I couldn't see the beginning and end of it, and it just was over us in silence for 10 or 20 minutes. And it's silent, isn't it? It's completely.
Yeah, they're completely silent. Yeah, there's no. They're not. You know what I mean? They're not. They're using gravitation, or they're using the mechanisms of the energy and the structure of reality. They're doing something that we're, you know, what anyway, that's probably another conversation. But
Tom and I have had that conversation too about you can be in a crowd of people and only some people will see the UFOs and others won't.
Oh, because of the frequency and where we're tapped into.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I really do think it has a lot to do with that. One night we went outside, we were drinking champagne, and I went out to my car to get something, and I see this huge mothership like you saw, maybe not quite as big as what you saw because I could see the end of it, but it was huge, and it was over by the airport Mesa in Sedona, and clearly over the neighborhood. And I go inside, Tom, hey, I said, come here. I said, what do you think? And he goes, oh yeah, yep, that's UFO. I go, yeah, it's really cool. It's so pretty. We're just standing there just looking at it. This is like 2014 or 15.
Right.
And later on we talked about it. I said, Tom, why didn't we get our cameras? And he goes, yeah, I know. That happens a lot. I said, yeah, they kind of just don't let you get your cameras, right? And he goes, yeah. And so, and it was funny because I went in the house to pour more champagne for us, and I came back outside, and he goes, it left. And I said, oh, shoot, and it had left by then,
That's so funny.
See, this is the thing is all this exploration is exploring. I believe that we are the universe, really. Absolutely. And so what we're doing is we're just looking at ourselves and we're exploring it. Right. And when you get the fear out of the equation and you realize that there's nothing really to fear, it's all God, and it's all, it's a wonder. You can have so much fun. You can really, you get yourself in alignment with that stuff. And then life becomes this really exciting, fun journey. Mm. I'd rather see ghosts and hear spirits than not, quite frankly. Yeah. I'd rather have that awareness and that communication that this is not just empty space, that this is not who I am, this body. I'd rather live my life that way because it's very freeing and it's exciting. It's fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's ultimately, we're all whole parts of this energy that is God and love, and that's our inevitable return to that kind of that unity and that oneness, or the realization of that as a portion of that spark, right? And I think the more connected we are to what is, the more fulfilling our lives become. Like, just from moment to moment, you're just living from this space of just fulfillment and love and connection and acceptance.
Yeah.
And then you can consciously direct your life in a way that you desire, you know what I mean? Versus always, attaching to things and always looking externally for a sense of fulfillment. It doesn't have to be this chasing your tail anymore. It just becomes a place of just stillness and love and presence and connection and a desire to be of service to helping others move towards that place of love and connection and truth.
Yeah. And a lot of laughter.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that absolutely.
It's I know people love to categorize and label things and put things in a box, and they want a manuscript as to how to do something and to how to have a happy life. Show me how to do it. And it's like, okay, then I'll show you how to do it. Go sit somewhere in a chair and look inside of your heart, and you'll find it there, and just sit there until you find it. Right. Because it's not going to be found outside of you. It's not. Those are going to be fleeting moments. They're going to be temporary moments. They're going to be aha moments. I know people who, go from one seminar to the next, next, trying to find themselves.
You're always searching for that externalized version of the internal reality that is ultimately the only way that you can self-realize.
Yeah. They go, oh, that was such a great seminar. I learned so much. Oh, that's another one. It's like this aha moment, and they get kind of like addicted to those aha moments.
Sure, and that's
nothing wrong with that. I mean, I do that.
That's the journey too for all of us, right? Yeah. It's a dance of internal and external stimuli, right?
Yeah, exactly. But but I guess the point of my story is that I know people who, are atheists, scientists, don't believe in God, or just are just non-religious or agnostic. They just don't care, who are more connected than people who call themselves a Christian or a master or whatever it might be. More connected, more Christ-like, more loving, more caring, because they're not wasting their time trying to be something that they think they're supposed to be for the world. They're being what is their authenticity, which is that loving, beautiful person. And that's all they want to do all the time. So they're living and walking the talk without even having to label it. It's just who they are. They become that which we're all seeking. They become that.
They embody it, right? Yeah, and that's what my path was all about. Is like, I think it's great that people, use meditation and things like that. But the way that I put on the mind of Christ personally was just working through my limiting belief systems, and relieving myself of that intellectual chatter and moving into my heart and connecting with people on just an emotional, on a fundamental level. And I found over time, my mind became more and more and more silent. And so I created this clear vessel for spirit to move through me. And then when it opened up, it was just a universal God consciousness blazing through me. And it was really more personally than I could manage for so many years to embody that frequency, of just allness in a human vehicle, right? So
and we're humans, so we're going to have our moments where we fall away from that too, and we're going to have our moments where we get ticked off and we start, and we feel like we're having to start from scratch. But sometimes I think that's just because we've exercised that muscle so hard, that then you need to pick up heavier weight. So sometimes we've hit a plateau. And we get frustrated with life again. Then we seek deeper because the learning never ends. We're always going to learn more.
Yeah, so, you're right, and that's what I want people to understand, that there's this inherent unity that exists in all of us as spiritual beings, but the vehicle through which we evolve consciousness is an identity. And so identities and egos and opinions and resistance patterns and frustrations and judgments, those are all part of this like dance of infinity. This is, we are beings that are ever existing and changing form and evolving and moving and growing and expanding. And so if we give ourselves the space to be able to be all that is, then we can have a relationship with all that is.
I love how you put things.
Thank you.
It's really it's very straightforward and very simple. It's like there's a wonderful philosopher from the 70s. He's passed away now, but Alan Watts. And I love Alan Watts. I feel like he's been kind of a comfort to me recently, because he speaks such truth. And he studied, as a philosopher of all kinds of religions, especially Eastern religions and things, but he ties it all in, all different religions and all different perspectives about the universe. And one of the things he said that I thought was so beautiful, he said, we're all looking for, what is our purpose? What is our purpose? We all want purpose. And we think our purpose is to build skyscrapers. We think our purpose is to be a mom or a dad or this or that. And it's not that. It's not any of it. It's just he says, the trees are just treeing, and the birds are just birding, and the clouds are just clouding, and the people are just peopling. And I thought, that's it. To me, that's it. That's what we're doing. We're just doing the best we can.
That's right.
Yeah.
I love
it's
that.
really, really something when you finally see that.
I love that.
It takes
I love you. I thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You're so special. You really are. People need to know that. People need to hear that. And I truly believe that we get caught up in the day-to-day mundane lives that we lead and all of the responsibilities to sustain ourselves. And it's really easy to forget to tell people that they're seen and they're acknowledged and they're loved and they're valued. And we need that. We all need that. We need to give that to each other.
Yep. Acknowledgement equals love.
Yeah.
It really does. And that means acknowledging other perspectives. And if somebody tells you something that you don't believe in, instead of saying that's stupid or how could you or anything else, realize that that's where they're at in their journey. And if you acknowledge it and you say, that's interesting, thank you for sharing, I really appreciate that. I hadn't seen that perspective before. Right. It doesn't mean you're saying I agree with you or anything else. You're not losing power in that, but you're giving that person love, and you'll find that those conversations will be so much easier when you just say that's true too. Oh, that's true too. Yeah. Because it's true for you.
Right.
And that's
how we build bridges, and that's how we build trust, and that's how we put down these resistance patterns, and that's how we develop rapport, and that's how we evolve as human beings, and society will become a direct reflection of the evolvement of the individual over time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're right. One of the things that I did that I have utilized in my philosophy was I had never read Alan Watts much, but there was one quote that I came across with him, and it was just an explanation of like the nature of God, love, reality, and it was like, God wanted to know itself in all ways possible, so that it began, separating itself so that it could experience itself in all ways possible through our individual self-expression. And it was a great way to kind of frame the nature of reality, being that, we're all just little portions of kind of God experiencing these individual streams of identity in order to facilitate that return to unity, or that just we're gathering experience for love for all that is, ultimately, I think, and learning by slowing down the frequency of the non-physical universe, which is where we all come from, and creating a physical universe that has a certain frequency that it allows us to experience a certain reality of physicality. The physical universe becomes a playground for God,
Exactly.
who was sourced from the non-physical. And even Dr. Peoples, which is what we talked about, and what triggered your listener about the whole Satan thing, is Dr. Peoples was speaking about the nature of darkness and light. And when people understand that darkness, part of self-actualization is embodying both that feminine darkness and that masculine virtue, light, and the feminine being the non-physical place where we are birthed from God, and the physical being the light, or the physicality, or the masculine version of that dance of God, that this is all just one interconnected like relationship. And so it's not, you know what I mean? All of those limiting frameworks that mass consciousness operates from are the distortions that keep them in a place of fear rather than moving into a place of love and surrender and truth and unity. And so,
Yeah, we need the contrast in order to grow. We need the
you need, and we don't all want to be the fucking same. I mean, that's boring.
No, it would be horrible, wouldn't it, though? Yeah, and that's what Dr. Peebles says. There's unity in the diversity, and the unifying force is love. That's but we're the diversity in that. And if you want to know what God wants from you, I really think that what God wants more than anything is for us to love ourselves, to be thankful for the gift that we have of life,
Right.
and our uniqueness, and to love all aspects of who we are. I think that that's the greatest gift we can give back to God. I mean, people pray to God and ask God for all kinds of things, but like my mom used to say, she said, has anyone asked you what I can do for you today, God?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. I know. I remember many years on my way to work, crying and praying to the universe to allow me to be a vessel for God's love and to do the work,
Mm-hmm.
and, little by little, I continue to, to allow that flower to unfold. But it's amazing the amount of time that it really, to take care of yourself as an individual human being, you have to be very patient with that unfolding, and understanding that there's no end game to this. This is just a continual space of, recognizing all of the different intricate aspects of life, and trying to just show it fully for yourself, for others, to do the best you can, and to let yourself off the hook, and to love yourself, and to, try to accept what is and see the value underneath. To read life in a sense, that understanding that behind the curtain there's always a beautiful gift, even if it doesn't seem like that sometimes.
Very true. Very true. Pick yourself, brush yourself up, and brush yourself off, and get on with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to put a little bow tie on this. I think this has been a really beautiful and profound conversation, but I want to acknowledge how briefly, if you could share how you started channeling Dr. Peoples, and to really like acknowledge that relationship that's spanned almost 30 years. And because it's such a profound service that you give through that. And I just wanted to acknowledge, to share a little bit more about that, so that folks have a better sense for that relationship that you have, and for what you're currently doing now, so that that could be acknowledged and supported.
Well, I met him through Thomas Jacobson, who you spoke of earlier, who channeled Dr. Peoples for me. And I was just struck by the love. And I was also struck by the fact that every time Thomas would channel him, I would feel movement in my own body, and I could feel this connection with Dr. Peoples' spirit. So I sought it. I looked for him when Thomas quit channeling. I looked for Dr. Peebles with love. And I went based on the belief that Dr. Peebles knew I existed, but I didn't know whether he existed. And I wanted to know beyond a shadow of a doubt because I was tired of thinking about demons and all these other things. I just wanted to know if God's love is real and constant in my life, and God's got my back no matter what. And I wanted to know, once and for all what this truth thing was about, basically. And I wanted to know that spirit is real. I wanted to know that I could trust in that. And I knew that the only way to do that was through having that experience. And I really let Dr. Peebles come in to use my body, completely eradicated so many fears in my life. And it eradicated a lot of fear of a lot of different people too, because I got to know a lot of different spirits through this process and learned how to love what I would have thought would have been an unlovable spirit too. So it has really torn me down to build me up closer to God is what it's done. It's really, I can't get away with anything. I'm called on everything, and to be more loving, to be more gracious, to be more thankful through this process. I can't get away from it. And I feel him here. You want to say hi?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Of course.
Because he's right here. I mean, I can barely talk now.
Okay.
God bless you, Dr. Peebles here. It is a joy and a blessing when man and spirit join together in search of the greater truths and awareness. God bless you indeed, my dear Michael. You are a beautiful spirit. Goodness gracious, you are a student of the divine with beautiful listeners who are certainly, if my dear friend, struggling to understand some of the conversation that you've had here today, and at the very same time surrendering into it and saying, well, let's see what it's about. Let me see if I can figure that one out in my own life. So it's wonderful. You give people food for thought. And certainly, my dear friend, it is the learning that never ends. Ever, my dear friends, because it's a beautiful experience of existence. Life is indeed a dance, and certainly you do need the contrast to grow, and certainly you do, my dear friends, need to surrender into the embrace of life rather than holding it at arm's length. Holding life at arm's length, goodness gracious, it takes so much energy. Why waste your time? Why not enjoy the embrace? Why not enjoy the love? Why not celebrate that greater truth that exists within each and every one of you, students of the divine? And God bless you indeed, my dear friend Michael. Would you understand? And would you have questions or comments? God bless you indeed.
Oh, thank you so much for showing up.
My friend. Yeah, we certainly want to give people the understanding that through Summer's channeling and such, you see the contrast here of this beautiful little girl who just loves so very much the world, and then allows for me to come through to speak to you. And it's a beautiful dance. It really is. It's a relationship that she has developed here, surrendering entirely this, shall we say, this uniform that she wears as a human being, this bodily skin, to allow for us to play through it like an instrument. God bless you indeed. And that is your instrument, my dear friends. You have a physicality. You have an instrument through which you play. How is it going to sound? Are you giving beautiful music to the world, the celestial choir, with your own voice? God bless you indeed, and your loving energy. It's up to you, my dear friends, how you create your own reality. God bless you indeed. Yeah, my dear friend Michael, goodness gracious, we just go rattling on, don't we? God bless you indeed, yeah?
Yeah, forever and ever. And I talk to you often, and I appreciate what you are continuing to do here. And most importantly, it's just wanting to allow, to help bring this reality to mass consciousness in such a way that we can remove kind of these judgments and allow people to see that the requirement that it takes to move ourselves out of the way so that love can move through us, and that we don't have to be so afraid of the unknown, that we can learn to tune into our own relationship with love, and more we can discern when somebody is in integrity and somebody is in love, and when there's a tremendous value there. I think that's really what we're trying to move towards, is helping people open up to their own hearts.
Yeah, absolutely. Goodness gracious. Yeah. Life is a joy. There is so much to explore. Your universe is so vast. And there are so many perspectives that you can learn from. So many perspectives as there are stars in the heavens and beyond. And goodness gracious, my dear friends, if you release yourself, surrender into life, You would enjoy the journey so much more if each and every one of you are truly living your authentic life, your authentic self, giving to the world the beauty and the wonder within you, and allowing yourself to be seen and heard and felt by the world. You would discover that all the things that you're trying to figure out on planet Earth to get rid of, such as poverty, such as greed, such as hunger, goodness gracious, all of these things would disappear because you'd each be doing what you love. The people who love to build houses would build houses, and the people who love to cook would be cooking for the masses, and the people who love to farm would be farming, and the people who love to explore would be exploring and enjoying being served by somebody who just cooked them a beautiful meal. And you would find that you would fall in love with the journey so much more, God bless you indeed. And there will be a time upon the planet Earth where you will have this awareness that there are other dimensions, that there are other realms, and they're not scary realms, they're loving realms. We love you so very much, goodness gracious. We are existing in the 16th dimension, God bless you indeed. And you might say, well, there's not that many dimensions, my dear friends. There are so many dimensions. You are one of them. If you really think about it, you are a dimension unto yourself. You are a universe unto yourself. God bless you indeed, my dear friends. So if you can release your expectations around life and around yourself and surrender deeply into your heart, you will discover, my dear friends, that you are a journey without end. You are a beautiful journey to the heart that is always and forever more expansive, greater and greater love. God bless you indeed. What a joy life is, my dear friends. We love you so very much. And goodness gracious, my dear friend Michael, we shall allow the dear channel to return, but we want to say to you, you've done a beautiful job. You have beautiful work. You have tremendous courage. You've stuck around on the earth much longer than you expected you would be. And God bless you indeed, my dear friends. It's because you have great courage and so much love in your heart, and your tears show this so very beautifully. It shows that you care. God bless you indeed. Now, my dear friends, go your way in peace, love, and harmony, for life is indeed a joy, and all you have to do is you enjoy the journey to your own hearts, and certainly to your own enlightenment is simply lighten up just a little bit more. God bless you indeed. Hi.
Hi.
How did it go?
It was excellent.
It was, he was coming through.
Very strong, very fast, it was very, very profound. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing the relationship that you've developed with him, and the ability to move the symbols and the frequencies and the words through you at such a pace. Like there's a great harmony between you and the energy that he's that he embodies, it brings through you. You know what I mean? It's a very, very harmonious relationship.
Thank you. It's taken it took a long time to develop it and a lot of dedication, but it's interesting. This is like he's like high voltage coming through a low voltage wire. So my body's like, I feel the intensity.
Yeah, he told me the same thing about my frequency. He said the human body, the human body is a low vibration wire. And as mystics, we bring in a higher frequency than is actually designed for this because we are in a band of frequency on this planet, as a group of a consciousness, we share in a certain frequency range to operate from. And so as mystics, the more you tap into God and love and truth, your frequency, it's like burning the candle at both ends. So it's something I'm very conscious of. And he actually even mentioned that I have been here longer than I anticipated. And I think what he was indicating is just because of the intensity of my own consciousness and understanding that it's such an intense experience, at least for me, and I'm sure where I'm at now, and to be able to really hold on and to see the mission all the way through, and to try to to try to navigate and to try to like massage reality in such a way that I can achieve like the highest frequency of spirit in a physical body, and at the same time function in daily life, go out and do a job with normal everyday people, and so on and so forth. It has been a lot. And he also brought up how in the future, as we move towards doing what we love for a living, then the whole world is going to become more harmonious, which is part of what my message is to the world, is like, let's find out who we are. Let's move into a space of doing what we love. And then as a result, the world will be filled with a bunch of people who aren't just out there doing things. Like I've done shit that I pretty much don't like for the last 20 something years, but there's a purpose to it. The purpose to it is on my path. It is that surrender, is that grittiness, or it is that understanding mass consciousness by working side by side with them and understanding where their limitations are, in terms of helping humanity on a larger scale, maybe in the future.
Yeah.
But his message, he was very direct and very much in alignment with kind of what we've been talking about. So
Good. I'm so glad.
yeah.
Yay.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, you're welcome. Thank you for having me today.
Wow.
I always have things to talk about. So
yeah. Well, we have that air and fire polarity. I'm a Leo sun, and you're a
you are
Gemini.
okay.
So air fire is polarized somewhat, even though it's not specific Aquarius Leo, but it's still polarized. So
I'm a double Gemini, and I have Libra rising, and so it is really kind of hell on earth.
So you have a Libra rising, but what's your moon?
I'm a Gemini, but I can't. It's like hard for me to fall off the fence. I've like so Libra, trying to keep everything in balance all the time. So I'm actually kind of, I don't know if an enigma is the right word, but I'm really kind of a straight and narrow kind of person with this really weird thing that I do for a living.
Right.
I'm just I don't know. It's a funny thing.
Yeah, that's funny. That is funny. I have an enigma tattoo on my forearm here. It says love, sensuality, devotion.
Oh, okay.
Is your moon, is it an air sign?
I don't know.
We'll have to look at this.
I don't know.
Anyway, yeah, it's very beautiful.
Interesting.
Yeah, we could go into that. So thank you for being here. I love you. I appreciate you. Always be here for you if you ever need anything. And I really feel like, this conversation that we've had here can really help a lot of people. So thank you again for your time and your energy and for your heart.
I'll definitely be sharing this with others.
Sounds good.
Thank you. You're wonderful, wonderful sharings that you give as well. I mean, just so beautiful. I just love the way you, like I say, I love the way you share things. It's beautiful. Very straight, very direct, very, very untainted.
Thank you, dear. I appreciate you. Well, until next time, my friends, stay thirsty for life. I love you. Bye.
Bye.